Steelers quarterback room. As you know, it's been a topic of conversation all offseason, with the team signing Russell Wilson and trading with the Bears for Justin Fields. And now all eyes turn to Pittsburgh to see how they are going to manage this new dynamic. Steelers reporter Brooke Pryor is with us now from the owners' meetings in Orlando, where Tomlin used a racing analogy to describe who has a proverbial inside track. Brooke, what did he have to say?
Well, Hannah, Mike Tomlin did absolutely nothing to quell this quarterback controversy that's brewing between those two new acquisitions, but he was transparent both with the media and with his quarterbacks about where they stand right now.
We're not resistant to competition, but as I've mentioned several times of late, I just think it's appropriate to establish positioning as we get into this thing. And the term that I've used is Russell has pole position. And why do I use that term? Because during this time where we're not formally working, man, I just think it's beneficial. His experience in the National Football League, his process that's been honed and perfected, talking about over a 12-month calendar, is not only good for him, it's good for teams. When it's time to compete, we get in training camp-like settings and going to preseason stadiums and so forth. Obviously, Justin will be given an opportunity to show his capabilities.
You know, Mike Tomlin was also asked what excites him about having two new quarterbacks, a new offensive coordinator, a new system. And he said, I'm excited about being uncomfortable. He said the anxiety that's created with that leads to growth. And so I asked him, I said, Mike, have you been comfortable at any point in the last couple of years? And he said, I am fundamentally against comfort. Now, just a few minutes ago, I talked with General Manager Omar Khan, and I said, have you noticed that Mike Tomlin enjoys making people uncomfortable? And he kind of smiled and said, he has his moments.
I thought he looked really uncomfortable. I think somebody should have handed him a terrible towel or something. I mean, he was sweating like crazy this morning, Brooke. Thank you so much. Wilson and Fields have performed on similar levels, actually, over the last two seasons. Fields has the slightly better total QBR, but the yards per attempt, the turnovers, the sacks, those are all virtually the same. Wilson's 100 sacks taken in the last two seasons, that leads the NFL. One more than Fields at 99, and 23 more than Geno Smith, third on that list with 77. As we're back with Mina and Acho, and keeping in mind that the driver who starts out in the pole position doesn't always win the race. So, Mina, what do you think is going to be the deciding factor in who wins this job?
Yeah, it's an interesting quarterback competition, Hannah, because as you highlighted there are actually a lot of similarities between these two players, despite the fact that they're at very different points in their career. Similar weaknesses that would explain why they were available to Pittsburgh at the value that they were able to get them for. The high sack rates, another thing I would highlight, both quarterbacks have very long time to throw. I think for Fields to win this job, to surpass Russ, two things have to happen. One, he has to demonstrate to Pittsburgh in this offseason that he can improve upon those things, the sack rate and the time to throw, essentially that he can play faster. And then the other thing I think that'll be paramount for the Steelers is Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator, has to decide that he wants to lean into Justin Fields' mobility. We have seen time and time again with this young quarterback that when he plays for offensive coordinators that don't do that, he struggles. And then when they do lean into it, and it is extremely dynamic, they're able to call a more efficient offense with him. So I think both of those things have to be in place. My opinion, Russell brings you a higher floor. Fields brings you a higher ceiling. It's going to be up to the Steelers whether or not that ceiling is worth it.
And there are similarities, Mina, to your point, even to the graphics point, over the last 2 years. But there is one major difference. I would argue the major difference is the 10 years prior to that Russell Wilson does have. Those are years of experience. Those are years that he's been to Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He talked about the interview with Mike Tomlin. If you listen more, Mike Tomlin said, man, he was blown away by the preparation that Russell Wilson had. Even in the interview, he talked about the history of Pittsburgh and what he wanted to do and how he wanted to go and win multiple more Super Bowls. And so I think that though there are similarities, I think the difference is clear, and the differences will be clear moving forward. I think you talk about how Russell Wilson has honed in his body. Yes, yes, the last couple years, there's been some injuries that have been on the table, but he's honing his body. And Mike Tomlin said it himself. He's not worried about what happened in Denver. He's looking towards the future, not looking in the rear view, looking through the windshield. And so I'm excited about this competition, but I think it's more so that pole position with Russell Wilson and him keeping that spot, and Justin Fields learning how to become an NFL quarterback for the long term.
And in terms of experience and health, you mentioned both. Wilson started 188 of a possible 195 games in his career. That is a very large body of work, second most among active quarterbacks. All right, let's